Alcohol Tipping Point is brought to you in partnership with Speak Studios and Speak Boise. Speak Boise is a community-driven studio space where voices from all walks of life can speak and be heard. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook at Speak Studios, Speak Boise, and at their website, speakstudios.com. Speak Studios, speak and be heard. This podcast is also brought to you by Instant Imprints. Promote better with Instant Imprints. Instant Imprints are Boise's visual communications experts and your place for everything you need to promote your business, club, school, or group. As a locally owned business, Instant Imprints specializes in making your organization more visible with custom branded apparel, embroidery, promotional items, print services, and wide format printing for signs, as well as banners and vehicle graphics. Want better ways to get noticed? Visit Instant Imprints at instantimprints.com/Boise or call 208-IMPRINT. That's 208-467-7468. Welcome back to the Alcohol Tipping Point podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Maisner, and today we're going to have a party, a mocktail party. I'm super excited to have our guest, Diana Licalzi. She and her friend and fellow dietitian Kerry Benson are the authors of the new book, Mocktail Party, 75 plant-based, non-alcoholic mocktail recipes for every occasion. And so thank you, Diana, for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Tell me a little bit about just who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Diana. I am a registered dietitian. I am also a certified diabetes educator. A lot of the work I do as a dietitian is actually in the field of diabetes. So I have a program that I run. It's a 10-week program to help people reverse and overcome pre and type 2 diabetes. But I also have been very involved in this sober curious movement with the release of my book, Mocktail Party. And I actually also have another book called Drinking for Two, Nutritious Mocktails for the Mom-to-Be. That was released back in 2019, and that's intended more for pregnant women who are looking for some alcohol-free alternatives. And yeah, that's a little bit about myself. I focus on the sober curious movement. Kerry and I, my co-author, we became super passionate about it a few years ago, and I just really have loved being a part of it and writing these mocktail books and seeing how much this movement is really growing and taking off.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you did write this book. Well, what has your experience been with alcohol?
So back in 2019, when we were writing, Kerry and I became very passionate about empowering women to have pregnancies without alcohol. Kerry had done a lot of research in the fetal alcohol spectrum disorder space. And we were very good friends. We actually went to Tufts together. We both got our masters in nutrition science together and became very quick friends through that experience. And we had a really great opportunity to write this first book, Drinking for Two, Nutritious Mocktails for the Mom-to-Be. And that's when we really started to get involved with this movement, like the sober curious movement. And we then the book did really well. It was well received. And so our publishers wanted us to write the second book, Mocktail Party, so that it appealed to more of a general audience and not just a pregnant woman. And throughout writing that book, we were doing a ton of research about alcohol, and I was really learning about the effects of alcohol and how it can have a lot of negative effects on you, and how the opposite is true. So if you limit or reduce your alcohol intake, it can really have so many great health benefits. And so we were writing that, and it was around the pandemic that we were writing at the start of it. And I was definitely drinking more than usual, more than my typical amounts. And I was starting to, I started reevaluating my relationship with alcohol. And I had gotten to a point where I was like, is this really doing me any good? And Kerry and we decided to do an alcohol-free challenge. So, one of those dry January or dry Julys, but I think we picked a random month. We're like, okay, let's do a dry month together and we'll promote it on Instagram, see if other people want to get involved. And so we did that, and I have been alcohol free ever since. I loved how I felt without drinking, and just knowing all the positive health benefits that I was receiving without drinking really motivated me to keep going with this alcohol free lifestyle. And so it's been almost a year now that I've been completely alcohol free.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think that's what's missing from a lot of conversations about alcohol is you don't have to hit rock bottom. It can just be a health decision that you make. It doesn't make sense to live this like plant-based, healthy, you're working out, doing yoga, but then you're drinking alcohol every night and basically poisoning your body.
Exactly. I'm a dietitian, so obviously health is just so important to me. And, I focus on a plant-based diet. I do work out a lot. And I was like, you know what, this alcohol, it's not really doing me any good, especially towards my health. And it was just not making me feel good at all. Like, I was definitely, when I would drink the next day, I would feel just very down and like anxious and stuff. And I hated that feeling. And I just felt like as I got older, it got worse too. And let alone like hangovers. Oh my goodness. As I got older, the hangovers got worse too. I'm like, this is not doing me any good whatsoever. Like, being hungover the whole next day. And it would cause me to, I would also turn to, more fried foods, unhealthy foods when I was hungover. And that would just make me feel even worse. I'm like, this is just not healthy. It's just not making me feel good at all. And that's when I decided just to, do this alcohol-free challenge. And I'm so glad I did it, because I have loved being alcohol-free.
Yeah, agreed. I do not miss hangovers one bit. Well, what were some of the things, what were some of the surprising things you learned when you were researching your book?
So we learned that any amount of alcohol, so this is newer research, learned that any amount of alcohol can have a negative effect and can really increase your risk of a lot of different cancers. And so I don't think a lot of people really know this. And it's so easy to drink more than the recommended amounts. So a recommended serving for let's take wine as an example. It's 5 ounces of wine, which who's drinking 5 ounces of wine? No one. When you pour yourself a glass of wine, it's well over that amount. And I definitely was doing that when I had wine. It was 1 or 2 glasses, and it was definitely well above the 5 ounces. And so anything above that recommended serving will increase your risk for a lot of health issues, including cancer. And so as a dietitian, I'm like, okay, what am I doing here? This isn't good for me. And a lot of people don't realize how alcohol, just even a little bit more than what you should be drinking, can really affect you. And when I stopped drinking, I did notice my cholesterol improved greatly. So high cholesterol runs in my family. Have that genetic component. And when I did give up alcohol, it really came down a lot. And there is a link between alcohol consumption and higher cholesterol and higher glucose levels. So I was really pleasantly surprised to see both of those levels come down, which was great.
Yeah, I agreed. Excuse me. So just the health, and I am a nurse too. And I work with a bunch of dietitians, and just like you, when I started researching more about the health effects of alcohol, I was like, why did no one tell me this?
Right?
I mean, maybe they did, and I just had that confirmation bias, and I just didn't listen, because it does get promoted out there, like, have a glass of wine, relax, wine is good for you. And it turns out like, no, it's not. And it's not just
Yeah,
organic wine that is good for you.
exactly.
It's the alcohol in the wine. Um,
Right. And there's a lot of, you hear that a lot, that red wine or beer is good for you in moderation. And that stems from the other components in those drinks. So like the polyphenols or the resveratrol in the wine, it's not from the alcohol itself. And alcohol is it is a tricky substance to study. A lot of studies are observational studies, and there's a lot of other components that could be involved that are contributing to some of these quote unquote health benefits from drinking 1 to 2 glasses of wine. But the newer research and their better studies, the way they're conducted, is showing that it's really not the case at all. So if you can avoid these drinks and if you can try to get some non-alcoholic beer, you can still get those good benefits that come from those drinks, but without the alcohol, which has those negative effects.
yeah, and
Um,
that's why I love your book, just kind of exploring different fun drinks.
yeah.
How did you go about just picking recipes and coming up with your whole book?
So we had just gone through the whole process with drinking for two, so that really helped us with this book. We had kind of figured out more or less what worked well as a framework for recipes. And so what we did for this book, we wanted to provide different sections that would really appeal to people. So we found from drinking for two that people really like to have drinks during different occasions and seasons and stuff like that. So that prompted us to create a section just for holidays and seasonal drinks. And then we created another section for brunch because brunch is typically a time where people like to drink a lot. And then we have a section on classic drinks. So drinks that your typical classic drinks like a mojito or margarita that we created our non-alcoholic versions for. And then we also did a dessert section. So we have lots of fun dessert mocktinis, we call them. And we also have two other sections. One of them was drinks with a twist. So it's your kind of classic drinks, but we added our own little twist to it. So one example is our coconut mojito. So it's a coconut mojito. So a little twist to the classic mojito. And then one of my favorite sections is the drinks with benefits section. So it's just mocktails, but with an added nutritional benefit. So we have a chia fresca made with chia seeds. We have a turmeric tonic made with turmeric and some other great ingredients. And so we started there with the different sections. We mapped those out, and then we just brainstormed what we thought would be good recipes. And of course we scrapped a lot of them, but that kind of helped guide us through the creation of the book and helped us set up a framework for it.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, there's lots to try, so love
Yeah,
that.
it definitely was fun. And we wanted to make sure everything tasted great, obviously. And so what we did was once we had all the recipes kind of laid out, Kerry took half of them. I took the other half. We tested, retested until we liked the taste, until we were each satisfied. And then we swapped our halves. So then she took my half, I took her half, and then we tested each other's. And then we had lots of friends and families test the recipes too, because what may taste good for me is not necessarily going to taste good for someone else. So we wanted to really make sure our recipes resonated with everyone.
I love it. I love that you have a partner to help you out with that.
Yeah, it really made such a difference. It's so nice having Kerry involved with this.
So you mentioned, wanting to have lower sugar, avoid the processed sodas. Tell me what your thoughts are on artificial sweeteners.
So that's a great question. There's a lot of controversy on this topic. So on one hand, if you're using artificial sweeteners in place of sugary beverages, so if someone's having a Diet Coke over a Coke, it can help with achieving a lower caloric intake. However, because artificial sweeteners are, they're about 500 times sweeter than regular sugar, it can change your sweetness perception. So if you're having a lot of these artificial sweeteners, your tolerance for sweetness may increase over time. So something that is typically sweet, like a piece of fruit, like a mango, may not taste as sweet to you anymore. And then there is some newer research showing that artificial sweeteners could have an impact on your gut microbiome, a negative impact on your gut microbiome. And that's still newer research, still stuff is coming out on that. But yeah, so we wanted to really limit or not even include artificial sweeteners in our book, just because, and they can change your sweetness perception, and a lot of them are just made of chemicals, not the best for you. So what we wanted to do with our mocktails is use fresh fruit and herbs to really maximize taste as much as possible, and use that to provide sweetness. And when we did add some form of sweetener, we opted for things like agave or maple syrup or or honey, but in very small amounts. So it's okay. It's very, very minimal amounts. It's well below that daily limit that's recommended. So that's why we chose those natural sweeteners over the artificial ones.
Yeah, and can you speak to, when you first quit drinking, a lot of people, myself included, get quite the sweet tooth and a lot of cravings. What's going on there? What's happening in our bodies?
That's a great question. And I honestly, I can't speak too much about this because I'm definitely not, I'm not too educated about this specific topic, but from what I can gather, I think it's because you're removing alcohol, you want to replace it with something else. And I believe that sugary substance helps to replace that, the alcohol. Again, I can't really speak too much about this topic. I haven't really dug into the research, but it is something I have heard from a lot of people. And people tend to want to grab sweets instead. This didn't really happen with me. I don't know if it's because I instantly replaced all my alcoholic beverages with non-alcoholic beverages, and so I always had a replacement. But it is a good question, and one that definitely needs some exploring.
Yeah, I enjoyed having a sweet tooth again. It was kind of interesting when I was a heavy drinker. I was like, I don't care for sweets. But I think that it was the alcohol that was fulfilling that need. Yeah, totally. What about...
I'm definitely going to have to look into that some more.
Yeah. What about... there's kind of a mocktail controversy among the recovery community. Where some people think, oh, you're just triggering drinking, you're just mimicking it. You shouldn't do mocktails or non-alcoholic beer. I obviously don't agree with that, but I'm just wondering if you've noticed any backlash from that or conversations around that.
So fortunately, we haven't received any backlash, but it is very, very important. I think it really depends on the individual and how they feel. So if they feel like they're going to be triggered by a mocktail or one of these non-alcoholic options, then they should definitely stay away from them. But I think on the other hand, there is a space for mocktails and there is a space for non-alcoholic beverages. I think it can help a lot of people as well. It can help people have that alternative that they're looking for to have in place of alcohol. Because if someone's been drinking for a while, alcohol becomes such a part of their life, right? Even for me, it's such a big part of our society. And so every weekend, if you're not drinking, it's really nice to have some sort of a replacement. And for me, at least, mocktails and non-alcoholic beers serve as such a great replacement, and they actually help me stay alcohol free. So I think there's different ways to look at it, and everyone is going to have their own opinion, and they should, because if you're in recovery and you feel like that is going to trigger you, then you should absolutely stay away from those drinks. But on the other hand, if you're someone who's just trying to reduce your alcohol intake, if you're trying to just be alcohol free and you haven't had a more serious issue with alcohol, then I think there's a great place for them.
Yeah, personally, when I was very successful with, now I've been 18 months sober, but what helped me in that first month was drinking non-alcohol beer, because your habit is so ingrained, it's just that well-ridden road. And it's like you're still on the road, but maybe you're a little bit next to it. So you're still like coming home from work and you're going out to your garage fridge and you're grabbing a drink, but it doesn't have the alcohol in it. So it just helps with the extinguishing the craving for that actual alcohol substance. For me, love them.
Exactly. And I think a big part of drinking is the ritual and the experience of drinking. And so if you can just substitute that with an alcohol-free version, you still get to participate in that experience, but with a much healthier alternative. And if you are someone who is concerned that it could be triggering for you, then you always want to follow the guidance of your healthcare provider or sponsor before trying out these alternatives.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I wanted to share with you that my mom made your pickled Mary and we loved it. And I told her that I was interviewing you today, and I asked her if she had any questions. So she had a couple.
Okay, great.
One was, why do some people get a beer belly?
It's a great question. So alcohol is one of the first, it's the first thing our body uses as fuel. So when we drink an alcoholic drink, our body just starts metabolizing alcohol before anything else. So what happens is it causes all those other components of the alcohol, and if you're eating around that time, it causes it to be stored as fat. And a lot of that time, those carbs from the beer, for example, tend to end up in our fat cells or in this abdominal region. And so that's why some people, if they drink a lot of beer, those carbs that are in the beer just turn into fat. Because again, like alcohol, it's interesting, the first thing our body wants to do is just metabolize that alcohol, and it uses it as energy. So the carbs that our body usually uses as energy is deposited as fat. And a lot of the times it happens to be in that abdominal area.
Yeah, there's definitely a look.
Yeah.
It's usually like a dad. Is that dad bod? Dad bod has a beer belly sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, poor dad. Okay. What are shrubs?
Oh, that's a good question. I've been seeing shrubs more and more used in mocktail recipes.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually am not too familiar with them. I know I have one shrub or a drink shrub that someone had sent me, and element shrubs. Have you heard of them?
No.
Okay, so they use shrubs. Again, I cannot speak on this very well, but what they do, it's an apple cider vinegar shrub mixer.
Mm-hmm.
And so they use it. It's a way to kind of quote unquote spike your drink, so it gives your drink a little bit of a kick. And that's what we've used apple cider vinegar in some of our recipes for that kind of a bite taste. And so now I'm seeing these companies coming up with their own apple cider vinegar shrub mixes to, again, mimic that alcoholic bite. terrible explanation. I can't really tell you what a shrub is. I think it's, oh gosh. Yeah, I'm actually not completely sure of what a shrub is. I would think that it's kind of like a small bush, but I'm not entirely sure that's right. So I definitely will have to
That's
look into
funny.
that.
When people are like cutting down their junipers, like, let's put that in our drink. Well, maybe it did kind of come from, I mean, I think it's a mixer that traditionally you add to hard alcohol. But
Yeah,
you
I
can,
think it must be.
but you can also, like you said, add it to make a mocktail to have more of a bite. Because
Yeah.
I don't like a super sweet drink.
Hmm.
That's why I love that pickled Mary or a mojito, but that's not too sweet. Like I like the apple cider vinegar. What?
Yes, me too. It helps balance it out. I find like the apple cider vinegar will help if you do use juice in a mocktail, which we do in some of our mocktails. We find that that apple cider vinegar really balances it out, so it's not overly sweet.
Plus, apple cider vinegar has its own health benefits, right?
Exactly, it does. One benefit, so there's a lot of touted benefits for apple cider vinegar that aren't true.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people think it can help with fat burning, but there's just not a lot of good research to support that. But there is actually some pretty good research showing that it does help slow the absorption of other elements. So, for example, it can help slow the absorption of, if you're having a mocktail and you're having juice in your mocktail, apple cider vinegar can actually slow that absorption of glucose into your bloodstream, or juice into your bloodstream. And I know it's super interesting. And like there's been studies show that if you add vinegar to potatoes, and just another example here, it actually lowers the glycemic index of the potatoes. So meaning the potatoes, when they're digested, they're actually absorbed at a much slower rate into your bloodstream.
Oh, but
I
just
know.
potato, like, could you add it to anything?
Yeah. You could add it to anything. That was just one example of a study I had found, because I work with a lot of patients with diabetes. So, of course, that's
Yeah.
really interesting to me. So, if you can help slow that absorption of glucose, I mean, I think that's great. And so, there have been some studies that show if you add it to potatoes and even rice, like that was another study I had found. You add it to some white rice, and that kind of stems from um, why in Japan, in Japanese culture, they have a lot of white rice, but it's usually in the form of sushi, where they usually add like the rice vinegar to it. And
Mm.
so they don't have high rates of diabetes or anything. And they think that's, they eat a lot of white rice, but that could be a reason why.
Yeah, interesting. I'm gonna start
Yeah.
like everyone's starting to add vinegar to everything, to your coffee, to
Oh my God.
if like curdle in your cream.
Oh my gosh. Well, so carbs, if they don't
Just
have a lot of.
carbs. Okay.
Yeah, so because carbs are what's broken down into glucose, and
Mm-hmm.
then it enters our bloodstream. And so, yeah, because then protein and fat have a different digestive pattern, but carbohydrates, yeah, that'll work well with the apple cider vinegar.
Does it have to be apple cider?
No, so it can be any vinegar.
Okay, so any vinegar has that benefit. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and exactly. So you'll know too that when you drink our mocktails, and they have some apple cider vinegar, it's still not gonna make your blood sugar go crazy. It'll hopefully be digested in a much slower way.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. I love that. What are your plans for the future?
Oh, good question. Um, So Carrie and I we're so excited about this brand that we're creating. So we have branded ourselves as the Sober Dietitians,
Mm-hmm.
and we just love being in this field. It's such a welcoming, great community, the alcohol-free community. and we're having so much fun with it. So we have 2 of our books out, and so we decided, you know what, let's really dive into this and make a brand for ourselves. And so we have a website, it's thesoberdietitians.com, and we've been really into blogging, and so we're blogging about different topics within the sober curious movement, and then just alcohol research. So Kerry actually just wrote a fantastic blog about red wine and the proposed benefits of red wine and whether it really is good for heart health. So she really dug into the research and looked at studies and looked at what they found. And so if you are looking for some good, solid research that's translated into a language you can understand, I highly recommend checking out that blog and just checking out our blog in general, because we're having a lot of fun writing about alcohol and its impact on your health and how you can have fun without alcohol and stuff like that. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and we're excited to continue to build out this brand. And so that's kind of what we're envisioning for ourselves for the future, really developing this brand.
Yeah, I love that you do that and that you're in the health community and making changes that way.
Thank you.
I work for a wellness department, like I said, with dietitians and health coaches, and we're going to do a video series just on recipes and film ourselves making different recipes, but I'm going to do a mocktail section using your book and your recipes. And that's just going to go out to the clients that we serve. So just getting that message out there about just being healthy and taking care of our bodies and really being considerate about what we're putting in our bodies. Because we've been told like alcohol is okay, but really causes more harm than good.
Exactly. I love that. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with this brand. We're trying to help people realize that they can still have fun without drinking, or you can limit your alcohol intake. It's so healthy for you. So we're really trying to get that message out there with this brand that it's okay to cut back on your alcohol intake, and you actually should, because it's so much better for you. And people just don't realize how bad it can be for you. So that's what our mission is with this brand.
I love it. So you kind of mentioned before, but just to recap, where can someone find you and your books?
Okay, so they can find us on most social media platforms. We're the Sober Dietitians. We also have our website, thesoberdietitians.com. And as for our books, they are sold. Mocktail Party is the one that just came out. It's sold wherever books are sold, including Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Target, Walmart, Indie Books, I believe it's called. I find most people find it easier just to order it on Amazon. So it is there. And same with our other book. It's available wherever books are sold. And it makes a great gift for people. Drinking for Two. If you know a pregnant woman, definitely get her a copy of Drinking for Two.
Yeah, it's a great gift, and it's just cute. It's kind of like a smaller size, and it has a shiny I was like, oh, this is a pretty little book.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. The cover, our publisher did such a great job with the cover for Mocktail Party. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and doing the good work that you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on.
Attention, Idaho and California residents. If you're shopping for a mortgage, contact PacFi, a mortgage brokerage with the top wholesale lenders in the nation. They are committed to simplifying the mortgage process, saving you time and money. Call 858-442-7048 or visit pacfi.com. NMLS number 1462943, Equal Housing Lender. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Alcohol Tipping Point. I'm always here for you guys, so please feel free to reach out and talk to me on Instagram at Alcohol Tipping Point, and check out my website, alcoholtippingpoint.com. Again, I hope you can use these tips we talked about for the rest of your week. And until then, see you next time.